Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. This episode I'm super excited for. As you guys can tell, I'm kind of just going to do a narration with this episode. I'm just trying new things, and especially when it comes to making my time, um, my time be valuable like everyone else's. So sometimes I don't have time for a full set up, record, do the whole thing. So this is a great life hack, as I call these things. So this episode, I've been wanting to do this for a while, um, is about the Iowa State Capitol building, one of my favorite buildings, I think, ever that I've ever seen and been inside of. And then the Sailors and Soldiers Monument that is next door to it, that I was previously kind of unaware of. And then as I started to do more exploring, found found this and just found it to be so intriguing. And on a couple of my other episodes, I know we've talked about the idea of Tartaria and this old world fourth era style buildings. Um, that we find all over the country, but we do find a lot of it here in the Midwest, um, between Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois as well, and parts of Michigan and things like that. So Iowa just has this wealth of all of these interesting, really old world 1800 style buildings that are just beautiful, beautiful architecture that you wouldn't expect in the middle of the Midwest, in the middle of Iowa, um, in the 1800s, 1800s is when they say they've built most of these, which I always find to be ironic, because these buildings that we usually reference and talk about are so elaborate. They're so gorgeous. The Art Deco Renaissance style is they spared no expense on these buildings, and it's quite obvious. And the artwork inside and the attention to detail, very Romanesque, very mythology related, all of them for the most part, where they have these pediments, these Romanesque, Greek mythology type figures that they're metaphorically referencing, just these columns, these just beautiful styles that we don't do nowadays. Um, which I always find to be interesting, since you would think we've gotten more advanced and we should have more resources and more artists, but it's very ironic when it comes to these styles. And like I said, the time of when all of these buildings seem to have been being built. Um, just like I said, the expense had to be enormous, and it seemed like there was just an artist around every corner. No shortage of resources and artists and architects to do this type of stuff. And in a lot of these cities, we find, a lot of these iconic buildings like that all have similar people involved. So I'm sure there's nothing coincidental about that. So with the Iowa State Capitol building, I love this building because to me it's like a palace. That's what I see when I look at it, when I'm in it. It's just incredible, and it's also the only five domed Capitol building in the United States. It's obviously got these four side domes that have the gold accents, and then our beautiful center golden dome. That is just it's something else. Like we see pictures, but when you go there, it's really crazy to look at it and be like, wow. I always tell people that I feel like if you didn't know better, if you just showed a picture of this capital to somebody that didn't know, they would think this is located in Europe or something like that. It's gorgeous, the style with these little domes accenting the big dome. These we find these domes a lot in this Tartarian style building. Um, this fourth era civilization that I kind of feel like we repurposed a lot of their buildings um, throughout the country, and uh, I think in Europe is where you would expect to see a lot of these buildings, and it a lot of things don't match up for like what this building is being used for versus what it looks like. We find that with the power buildings a lot. Power and light district in Kansas City, as well as like in Niagara Falls, Buffalo area. There's a whole rabbit hole we'll go down there. I also believe, I think that's the era of the Star Fort builders as well, that, just very intentional building that's meant to last and withstand just about anything. And I think maybe we found a lot of these things, which, especially in the Midwest, if you know anything about the mud floods, they are a real thing. And a lot of the Midwest, Kansas City, Omaha, places like that, had long histories of these mud floods coming through and things needing to be basically rediscovered, dug back out, and then built back up, built on top of. I think we've talked about that fun church in Omaha that they say they built it from the top down. So the Iowa State Capitol was built in the 1800s. When I was looking for pictures of construction of it, there aren't very many. Um, but the ones that I could find, again, like I said, it's just wild to look at this. There's absolutely nothing around it. Just like sharecropping type of little shanty towns, farmers, just everywhere. It doesn't look like this is where you should be building a palace. And we'll get into this marble inside. There's almost 30 different types of marble inside of this Capitol building, and a lot of it's imported. So that's another thing. We haven't even gotten into the gold dome yet, but it is real gold. All of the gold that you see on top of the Capitol building is real gold. They did the numbers and they realized that, hey, it's actually just going to be cheaper to continue to lay real gold up here than it would be to paint it gold. And, hey, if it makes sense to them, okay. And I know every couple of years, every like 5 to 10 years, as Iowans, it's news that they're adding more gold leaf to the Capitol buildings, and we see scaffolding and see guys up there doing this. So my question is like, what's the pay like? What's the pay like to get to be up there on the top of that building laying this gold leaf? But I just want to get into the details a little bit about these domes and this style of building. It's built out of limestone and sandstone, they say. Which, I mean, not they say, you can clearly see it, but just gorgeous. And one of the things I love about this building as well as an Iowan is the way that this building reflects the sun throughout the day, and like sunsets and sunrises is purely unique. The building, the stone, it will reflect these reds, orangish, pinkish glows from the sunsets or sunrises. And it's beautiful. And watching the sun glint off this gold dome is just magnificent. And it obviously sits up on a hill. way up there. You can see it all over Des Moines. And let's just get into these details in these little portholes that go around all of these domes and these intricate little designs and the pediments and these Romanesque figures that we see. Just beautiful. Um, it's always interesting to me looking at stuff like this, and again, yeah, like being like, oh yeah, they built this in the 1800s and decided this was their law building in the middle of Iowa. Another fun fact: Des Moines in French means city of the monks, which, when we get into this fantasy library inside, kind of makes sense. Yeah, just look at the detail. Look at all the little filigree and the little tiny artwork on each one of these domes. There's not a single surface like this that is not, you know, decorated and being like paid attention to. And it's just beautiful to me every time I see it. And then obviously coming up these steps in the front and being able to see all of downtown straight down is just awesome. Fun fact, I did when I won Miss Iowa 2020, I um I took my pictures on the steps of the Capitol with the building behind me with my crown and sash. Because yeah, it's a palace. I was like, okay, a queen needs her palace. Let me go find it and take my pictures. And it has this awesome sundial as well outside that I think is really cool. And yeah, just this view of the city is just beautiful. So coming in, I had to go through, there's multiple levels to this, so we'll work our way up. So coming in, you're coming in on the ground floor, which is where the security is, and there's tunnels underneath this building all over. I'm sure they go all over downtown and all over places. Nearby, there is another law building that sits next to this that I'm sure they connect to each other. So coming in, obviously going through the little metal detector, and then I did ask the guy when I went to the front. I said, "Hey, do I need a tour guide or can I do this on my own?" And he's like, "No, you can do it on your own." And he gave me a little pamphlet and told me all the best places to go and check out. And then I asked, is it okay if I film? Is it okay if I'm taking pictures? He's like, absolutely. Thank you for asking, though. So that was fun. But coming in, you come up the series of stairs. You come up around the bottom stairs and then up to what would be like the main floor. I would say, kind of the main floor, because we're going to be looking up at this dome from the inside in multiple different angles and from both levels. So coming in, it's just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. And we're going to get into this marble. Like I said, there's 29 different types of marble in this Capitol building. And the way they work all these types of marble together is gorgeous. And again, they definitely spared no expense on attention to detail, on grandeur, on scale. And again, you're going to hear me say this that like a few times, that this doesn't look like a place in Iowa to me. Like if somebody said, "Oh, where is this?" Especially as we come up these stairs and we look at these paintings, like I'm talking about Europe. So you come up this gorgeous grand staircase with all of this marble, and you're met with this massive painting. Um, And you can't really appreciate it until you look at it from multiple angles because it's so big. And the whole building is huge. I'm only 5'3", but like it just makes you feel so small inside buildings like this, and it's just like, wow. The grandeur and the scale, eh, the attention to detail with that is amazing. And it's meant to take your breath away and awe you. And it just looks like a palace. If you keep telling me they make laws here, okay, I believe you. I know they do now, but wow, this looks like a European chateau, a European palace. When you look at the way they build things and the way they make these incredible buildings over there, and we repurpose them, I think here. Um, they turn them into municipal buildings, schools, whatever. But it seems like a lot of these buildings have been repurposed. So this painting is called Westward. It was painted by a New York artist giving his impression on settlers coming to Iowa. Yeah. So they couldn't find a artist from Iowa for this grand building. So they got a guy from New York to tell you his vision of people settling Iowa. Interesting. Huge painting. And yeah, like I said, coming up the stairs and looking at this, I went up um both sides and like came down both sides because I just wanted to be able to get into the whole painting, and obviously these figures on top. Look, yeah, look at these figurines and the paintings more on top, and obviously this gold leaf that is just all over the building. And there's no shortage of the marble all over as well, above every major doorway, everything, the floors. Um, and the story of this evidently is when they were building this in the 1800s, originally they deemed it a failure. And then they're like, okay, whatever, let's just finish it. And then they came up with this. I find that to be super, super interesting as well. So, as we come into this building, this dome is incredible. And the way that that's I just can't stress this enough, that the way that the light coming in from the sun at the top of this dome and the windows around, obviously, plus just the lighting inside, the way it just glows inside and glows off these floors and off the marble pillars, and all of it is so beautiful. It just takes your breath away. And yeah, looking up and just getting into the details, and look at these pillars and these Roman figures. Yeah, beautiful. And I know that there are 12 of these statues getting into the top of these pillars. They are There's 12 of these statues and 12 paintings that correlate. So they all stand for different things, that, they represent history, science, law, fame, literature, industry, peace, commerce, architecture, agriculture, victory, truth, and progress. So the paintings and the statues all have their individual meanings. And then this dome is beautiful. Just gorgeous. And this flag at the top is a representation of the flag that represents the Grand Army of the Republic. So basically, it's a reminder of Iowa's efforts with the Union to preserve the Union um, during the Civil War. So getting into this dome, it's beautiful. The light, the flooring, all of it is so amazing. And the floor, they evidently redid that as well um, in the 1900s, and then again in like 2011, and 300, 300K. Like I said, if that's what it cost in 2011, I can only imagine the cost of all of this in the beginning. After the Great Depression, in the middle of Iowa, importing all of these materials, these architects, the artists, the sculptors, the gold. It just blows my mind. Um, and there is a copy of the battleship USS Iowa, which is a famous battleship in our Navy that we have on loan from the Navy. I didn't get a picture of that, but I had more important things, guys. I was trying to get to this library. So then you come up the stairs and you are greeted with this beautiful painting, like I said, and the dome again from the second floor. It's just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful, in awe. And I picked a perfect time of day. There's nobody here. It was quiet, nobody here, just a couple of other people. And I just got to take my time and walk around and get these photos and not feel weird. So let's move on to this dream library. And for all my Disney nerds out there, this is my Beauty and the Beast, Belle's Library type fantasy. And again, like anytime I look at this, it's just, this is giving me Europe. This is giving me a palace in Europe, a chateau in Europe. This is the Royal Library. This is, they have a royal ballroom, all of these things. It's just so massive and beautiful. And let's get into these iconic staircases. So it's 4 levels of these iron grillwork staircases, and it's just beautiful. No complaints other than it's not mine. And I mean, it completely occupies the entire wing, the entire West Wing. And I think there's like well over 100,000 volumes, and it's just beautiful. And I did go up the staircase that I was allowed to go up and get these beautiful shots. And then when I was like kind of checking out behind me, because you obviously can get off on each level, there's a little roped off area, and I kind of peeked back there, and there's these cute little hidden nooks and hidden offices, and all I wanted to do is like step over that little rope and go back there and just check it out for a second. Come on. But I just happened to like look down, and there was a guy with a with a camera. There's a photographer walking around doing the same thing I was doing, looking directly at me, waiting for me to come down the staircase so he could also get his shots. So I was like, oh no, and just came back. came back down and continued my process. And yeah, just a beautiful library. This would be my dream job. Outside of podcasting and traveling the world, like if I had to do, you know, something mundane and love it, this would be it. This would absolutely be it. I just look at all the details. Again, this marble, the marble everywhere, these glass miniature domes, so beautiful. These little details and symbols, so beautiful. Like the entire aesthetic is fantasy to me. And again, it just blows my mind that this is something we're building back then, but we don't build nothing like this now. Like, where did the spirit go? Where did the art and you know, the desire to elevate architecture go? Because we're capable of it. We absolutely could do this nowadays. We just choose not to. So, yes, like I said, City of the Monks, once you hear that and then you see this library, you're like, "Oh, that kind of makes sense. City of the Monks." Yeah, just gorgeous. And then coming back out, um, I was able to go into the House of Representatives. They were not in session, so I was able to sneak in there and get some beautiful pictures. And again, if you take out these, just close your eyes. Just close your eyes and imagine it without these little desks. And tell me this isn't a ballroom or a throne room of some type. Like, look at the ceilings, these columns, the detail, absolutely gorgeous. This just takes me to Europe. This takes me to Europe, to a palace. And, you know, we're not talking maybe Buckingham level, but we're talking about a smaller, but this is even huge. Again, another room I'm just dwarfed by. Just I walked in there and I just was like, it took my breath away. I just had to like, and I just, even after I was getting my content, I did just like put my phone down and I stood there and just looked up and like, same thing I did in the rotunda, just looked up and like slowly rotated like one of those gas station hot dogs. Just rotisserie rotation, because my brain was being fried at just the grandeur and the beauty of it. And I couldn't imagine this being your job every day. Every day you get to go to this palace and make laws and pretend that you're not in the palace. A girl can dream. A girl can dream. And again, these little smaller domes that you find on each of these wings, and the ceiling work and the reliefs and the pillars, the marble, and I mean even the woodwork and throughout the building is amazing. So they spared no expense on this building in the middle of Iowa in the 1800s on top of a hill. They built this hill in the middle of the city where there's nothing else there, nothing else around, and then they just built a massive palace. I'm not complaining. It was a day well spent. I was like, yes. So then coming back out again, I just want to show you guys again just the shot of this dome and the floor and the rotunda and coming through back again to this. Like this, just look at this. This looks French, European, um, Germany, Austrian style of building. If you didn't tell anybody where this was, they would think this is in a chateau in France. This is part of the Louvre. This is part of some sort of European palace or building that they have there, because the way that this pillowed ceiling comes up like that, it's gorgeous. Like, this is one of my favorite aesthetics when it comes to European architecture that they used to do. And then coming down to these reliefs, these paintings, very Renaissance. Ugh, and the grandeur of it. And just spending your like a few hours walking around the entire complex in the building, and then the Soldiers and Sailors Monument blows your mind. You're like, this is so beautiful. And it just puts your mind to work about what we were doing in the 1800s. You know, like it's not at all what I think they wanted us to believe or what we think we were doing in the 1800s. Especially when we find all of these buildings all over the country that are just like this massive scales, grandeur, no expense spared in the middle of, after a Great Depression, 1800s type, you know, the resources don't seem like they should have been there to do this, much less in Iowa, all over the Midwest where we find this stuff. And, we'll get into the corn palaces. I do believe I talked about that a little bit on one of my other episodes when we were talking about the mud floods and Kansas City and Union Station and the World War One monument, which again brings me to what we're going into next, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. Very interesting type of monuments to represent these things. They always go for these pillars. The World War One monument there in Kansas City is one of the most interesting places I think I've been, especially when you know symbolism and art, architecture, archaeology, history, and you start getting into these symbols and what this stuff means and seeing that they have these twin Assyrian sphinxes. Whew, that's a mouthful. Twin Assyrian sphinxes covering their faces as they face each other. And then these twin temples that sit on either side of this, basically an obelisk. All they didn't do is point the top of it. And then you have these Valkyrie figures going around the top of it, which is very much, as we get into the Soldiers and Sailors Monument and the Statue of Victory, and the symbolism is very similar. I just keep coming back to the way they were portraying things is always so odd to me, and how they don't really match, but people are like, oh no, it's to symbolize, it's a metaphor for, you say so, if you say so. So our Soldiers and Sailors Monument sits next to the the Capitol. It sits kind of on the same grounds. So it was a beautiful day. I just walked right over there because I'm like, I might as well. I'm here, no sense in making multiple trips, and just slows me down. So when we get into this, it's yes, another obelisk, another obelisk topped with, an angelic type of allegorical figure that represents Iowa. They represented as a vigorous young mother offering nourishment to her children. I mean, she is offering the nourishment. I mean, she's definitely offering it. Get into it, sis. And I know that there was controversy over the artistic details of this monument, and I'm sure it's because girl in the front is offering nourishment to the children on that level. So this entire thing is gorgeous, and the main shaft of it is granite, and it's topped with the figure Victory. This entire thing is 135 feet. Definitely felt like it. I did kind of climb this platform here to be able to get into the details, and some of it is these bronze reliefs that are on the side were kind of hard to depict in the sun, so I had to get up there and look at it. But listen to my excuses for why I climbed this monument. There was nothing that said I couldn't climb it. I didn't do anything. I just walked up there and got some pictures. Um, but yes, this figure was, you know, also built in the 1800s, and uh, they said that it was partially funded by war taxes, and it was meant to, commemorate all the Iowans that fought in the Civil War. So this building, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, is beautiful, and getting into all these fun details on it as I go around it is is interesting, because again we have these angels, we have these um Romanesque figures, these Valkyries as I would call them, and it's just beautiful. But it again, it looks like a European type of monument, in my opinion. It doesn't look like something that you would just see in the middle of Iowa. It looks like a European type of monument. And I'm sure, they're going to say, well, that was their inspiration, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's not. Just saying it's interesting to be in the middle of Iowa and have these type of reliefs and figurines. So yeah, as I walk around this, there's all of these bronze reliefs and these beautiful elements and the plaques, and these are representing privates, officers, lawyers, farmers, old men, boys, judges, builders, everyone that was meant to represent the building of Iowa, and obviously our sailors as well. And I tried to really get into this statue of Victory on the top, because it's so pretty. And these old pictures of the monument look crazy with all these people just gathered around it. And yeah, I'm wondering how I can definitely see, if you've got this type of a figure and you've got this figure of Iowa, as we're calling her, just she's similar to Columbia, that's they just renamed her. We find that a lot in these world fairs. that, yeah, you've got a family, and this figure of Iowa is sitting there offering nourishment to the children. So these pictures are wonderful, though. And I do believe at one point they were going to move it and put it somewhere else. And that didn't happen. So, getting into these monuments in Iowa, I want to make my way over as well to Sioux City, there on the border of Iowa and Nebraska. There is an iconic monument over there. It is called the Sergeant Floyd Monument. It is 100-foot pink limestone obelisk. Egyptian obelisk that is, meant to commemorate the fallen friend of Lewis and Clark, Sergeant Floyd. And the story supposedly goes, he died along the way and they loved him so much that they stopped and they buried him along the river there. But because the river floods, his grave got washed out. And so they collected what they could of his remains and then built this entire giant obelisk that can't be moved. In the middle of Iowa, a giant obelisk on the border. Uh, you can't make this shit up. I love all of the fun, interesting things. I wanted to also, when I was doing this, it was too bad I didn't have like more of a day because I also wanted to drive back to my hometown of Newton, Iowa, because Jasper County has a gorgeous courthouse, just gorgeous. And when I was in it occasionally, I I was just in awe of the beauty of it every time and just looking around at like, wow, this is so elaborate, especially for a tiny little town like Newton. Um, but obviously I didn't get down there that day, so I'll have to get those pictures another time and that footage for another one. But this episode, I really wanted to focus on the Iowa State Capitol because it's one of my favorite places that I've ever been and seen when it comes to these old world buildings and really get an appreciation for it and these five domes and just the the appreciation is how I will put it. The appreciation for the architecture, the design, and you know, I know that they say that this is when this stuff was built, but we find a lot of times with these old world buildings, like I said in the beginning, that a lot of these buildings seem like maybe we found parts of them. Maybe we found pieces, parts, remnants, and just like they do in a lot of places in the world, when new people are settling, they build on top of the ruins and the remnants of the older civilization if it's sturdy. If you go to Peru, you see this regularly. You'll see a Starbucks built on top of the ancient megalithic ruins because those are the only things that have lasted all this time and withstood her like earthquakes and everything else. So it's like, well, I'm just gonna, and it's almost impossible to remove any of it because it's so megalithic and it's so sturdy that, yeah, it's easier just to build our little Starbucks on top of it. That Starbucks won't be there in 1,000 years, but I promise you, those ancient megalithic ruins that we're building on top of now will probably still be there. And when it comes to how we build now, it's very much like you can tell that we are building in this cheap style, this cheap flimsy style. It's like the cars Obviously, if you live in neighborhoods where they do all these new developments and stuff, these new houses go up in 6 months or less. And they barely pass inspection. These people are slapping it together. And a family's paying 400, $500,000 for this house, and it's slapped together with the cheapest of materials because they're trying to put so many of them out. And it's never going to hold up like they used to build a house out of brick, out of limestone, out of granite, um, where it has good bones and it's solid. And you can tell the stuff that is made to last. And when it comes to these type of buildings, I'm always like, wow, this is this is something else. It really makes you think. And another way when I see that is like the half windows. The windows that are basically built into the ground. I'm not talking about egress windows. I'm talking about windows that are halfway in the ground where the sidewalk is, at an angle going past this window. That tells me that there was a lower level of this building that had a full window at some point, you know, and something happened where you had to just, you couldn't remove that layer and you had to continue to build on top of it. That's all they're doing in Venice. All over the world, that's all these people are doing. They're just building on top of the older structures because it's cheaper and easier to build on top of these things than it is to do it ourselves. So when I see a lot of these Tartarian buildings, that's the first tell, is I can see the foundation structure and can tell you like this isn't us. This wasn't us. You can tell, like going into Union Station and just standing there and looking up at the ceiling, walking through this building, and like, yeah, it was a train station at one point. But like, what was it before then? Because look at this building, look at these cornerstones, look at these columns, these pillars. This stuff was made to last and be repurposed if needed. And when we come into the Midwest and see this type of building, type of stuff, I think one of the things that stands out to me that we have all of this going on in the Midwest, I think one of the big reasons for that is that, yeah, we get our little bit of flooding now and then, and we do get some tornadoes and things like that. However, I think primarily the Midwest is quite sheltered from most natural disasters and like real cataclysmic type of occurrences. And I mean, the amount of people that are like, oh, they mistake Iowa with Ohio or Idaho, or a lot of people don't know that there's really anything going on in Iowa. It's a flyover state. They're like, oh, well, there's nothing there, right? Oh, they might know somebody from there, or they might be like, oh yeah, they know our football teams, our college, but there's a lot in Iowa that's super interesting, and it's kind of a little time capsule. Like a lot of the Midwest is like that. And I think that's the reason, we don't have these mass earthquakes, we don't have hurricanes, we don't have forest fires. We get some tornadoes, we've got cornfields, and interesting thing about Iowa is there was a lot of mining going on in Iowa. A lot of southern Iowa was mining towns, for coal and things like that. Iowa was one of the first states to have like the railroads come through it. Excuse me, come through it. And if we go up to Ames and the college there, they have a lot of remnants of these train stations and the things that they were doing up in Ames. But all over Iowa and the Midwest, we find these old world buildings that, they say were schools or asylums or administration buildings, or they repurpose them into law buildings and courthouses and things like that. And I mean, sure, if you say so, but I know what my eyes are telling me, and I know that this doesn't quite look like it sounds, but okay. It's equivalent to, you know, more modern day, Egyptians or whoever, stumbling upon the pyramids and being like, "Oh yeah, that was us. We did that." It's like it might have been, yeah, it probably was the people of the region. Yes, but it's not the same people. Somebody with better skills and better attention to detail and more intelligence did this, because this is all too well constructed and it's lasted, and it's all over the country. Obviously, I live in the Midwest, so this is the area I'm kind of exploring. Um, and we have, so much that happens here that just gets looked over, being that it's a flyover state and people think it's the middle of nowhere. But, right over in Illinois, we have Cahokia, which is an ancient Native American civilization that was an entire mound plaza style, like the Mayans. Huge population, aligned to equinoxes and solstices and things like that. So when I talk about this stuff, I just want you guys to understand that I'm just asking the questions. I'm not definitively saying anything. I'm just saying I'm asking the questions, because I think a lot of our history has been um, rewritten and paved over, just the way we're watching them try and do it now. So I think a lot of things haven't been taught to us the way they really were. I think the Native Americans, well, we know that the Native Americans were not just nomadic style of people, that they were building complexes and plazas and had large settlements that were permanent in cities. So I think we just got to give more credit to our ancestors and our ancients, and especially with the history of America and the wiping out of the Native Americans and the rewriting of history, the journey of African Americans in our country, all the way through to modern day, with the way things don't match up with these old styles of building, these inventions, everything. I think we need to take a deeper look at that, because if you forget your history, if you're not going to heed it, you're doomed to repeat it. So I'll leave you guys with that today. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. I can't wait to hear your feedback, and I can't wait to bring you guys more. Thanks.
One could secure with that.